Hi, I'm Dr. Kurt Stuke, and welcome to Introduction to Ethics. For my first weekly tips or guidance, I thought I'd go over some basic terms as found within the first week's reading. I realize for some of you this is your first foray into philosophy, and ethics is a field within philosophy, so I thought this might be helpful. So I'm going to turn my talking head off here and go into greater detail in the mind map that you see behind me. Thanks. Let's start by taking a quick look at four of the basic fields within philosophy itself. And those fields are epistemology, metaphysics, aesthetics, and logic. And I'm going to take a slightly deeper dive into each in turn. And then once that's done, we'll take a greater look at ethics. Let's talk about epistemology. As you can see, the epistemology, the generic definition, is the study of knowledge, belief, truth, falsity, certainty, and perception. So how does that relate to ethics, and why in the world is someone asking this question in the first place? Can we know well enough to have warranted beliefs, not only in the world around us, but concerning ethical propositions and behaviors? We like to say, well, I think that what I'm doing is the right thing to do. But how do you know that? How do you know that X, let X be any action, that X is ethical, that X is morally permissible? Is it simply a matter of a value proposition that is inherent to a specific culture? Is it something that is objectively true? Is it something that's known through reason? How do we know either that which is morally objectively true or that which is culturally asserted and pushed and lionized as what you ought to do? Do we know that there's a difference between that which we do, the descriptive, and that which we ought to do, the normative? Are the two the same? So this is how epistemology relates to the study of ethics. Let's turn now to metaphysics. And as you can see, metaphysics is the study of what exists, the nature of what exists. It will also look at cause and effect, freedom and determinism. That is, are we free? That question is one that is beyond the scope of ethics, although we will take a peek at it. In other courses that I teach, this could be the sole focus of the entire course. So it's a juicy question. It's a great question. But let's talk about metaphysics and being in general as it relates to ethics. In another course I teach, we look at euthanasia. And we look at, when does life, being, begin? When does it end? Ultimately, who has the moral right to take life or to forfeit life? And when we talk about capital punishment. So ontological issues, and I'm sorry for the highfalutin vocabulary, it's just an occupational hazard that comes with so many Greek roots. But ontology is the study of being. When we apply ontology within the realm of ethics and within the scenarios that ethical questions bring, we see that being, and in our case, human life. When does human life begin? When does it end? When is it okay to take it? When is it morally permissible not to? And outside of humanity, what about other species and beings? Do animals have, should they be protected? Is it morally okay to exploit the food chain for our own needs? Now, many of you might be nodding your heads, well, of course, but these are the questions, believe it or not, that ethicists will look at through the lens of, say, metaphysics or ontology while they pursue the study of ethics. You may have studied aesthetics in different courses. It's usually translated as the study of beauty. Have you ever wondered why some paintings are so cherished and prized and deemed beautiful that they hang on the wall in a museum, or why certain actions in life are considered beautiful, or how is it that certain people can live by certain principles, or how do we make sense of the different ways that people have said, well, this is how I'm living my life, and this is how I choose to import meaning into my life. These are aesthetic questions, but you can see by the way that I'm framing them that they have some relevance now to the study of morality or ethics. That is, where there are sometimes an intersection between the beautiful and the meaningful. What's the source of that intersection? Is it something that is objective? Is it something that is subjective? How should we? This is a question that has burned in the human heart and mind for as long as we've walked the surface of this globe, and that is, how ought I to live? And it's not only an ethical question, it's also an aesthetic question, but you can see why ethicists have spent so much time framing, studying, and analyzing this particular question, the question of how ought I to live? Why would an ethicist worry about logic? Isn't this just about like how I feel and how you feel and what our culture tells us is right or wrong, which is known as moral relativism? What in the world does logic got to do with it? In all fields of philosophy and critical thought, there are certain rules that will and must apply. When we make what's called an argument, it's not so much that we're being stubborn and we're forcing other people to take our views. To reason and to construct arguments is to use valid rules of inference such that our conclusions are supported not only through the form of argumentation that we've constructed, but the content itself is internally consistent and does not violate any of the rules of valid inference. One of the things that we'll look at is the study of fallacies. This will be on the side through some of the guidance that I will offer, but we'll try to avoid, as ethicists, as much bias and as much informal and formal fallacy as possible. Well, why? Because the positions that we want to construct need to be critically sound, critically valid, and hopefully cogent. Hopefully that wasn't too painful. We've looked at the basic fields within philosophy. What remains to do now is to look at ethics and to address, define, explore some of the basic concepts from within our first week. So I hope that was helpful. You can always contact me. I'm at kstuke@snhu.edu. And if you want to text, it's 603-867-0616. I'll leave that in the outro rather. But if you have any questions, please let me know, and thank you for watching.